Okay, our next session, first I want to thank our sponsor for this session. It's AAP Inc., and thank you very much for your sponsorship. We're going to, as tradition, or what we've been doing in the past, we're not going to go through full bios. I'm just going to introduce Dr. Jonathan Reichental. He's the City of Palo Alto's Chief Information Officer. And I'll just have Jonathan take it from here. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. There's my deck right there, or it was there. I think it's gone now. Just waiting for, well, folks are taking a little break, coffee and restroom break, so they'll miss the start of my presentation. The best part, they're going to miss the best part. Okay. Well, I have to say, we'll get this distortion taken care of here in a second. I'm particularly honored to be here because I spoke at last year's event, and apparently you liked me and you asked me back. So I can't think of a better privilege and honor than that. So thanks very much. What a great place, right? You haven't been out for a while, but it is gorgeous outside. I probably shouldn't tell you that because you might all head out and enjoy it. But it's a deep blue sky. It's a gorgeous morning in Monterey. That differs from the last few weeks, as you know, where it's been pretty cloudy. So I'm definitely going to change the topic today from the one you've been listening to for a while. You know, outside of climate change, this is probably the second most important topic you need to know about for yourselves, for your airports, and for your family. So this is not some sort of abstract topic. I want to talk about stuff that's really going to change the world, and it's changing the world. Stuff that's going to put half the population out of jobs, meaning we have to reinvent ourselves, right? We're going to have massive challenges ahead that requires us to completely rethink about the future, and you get a preview right now from me. What about that for a setup, right? So hopefully that gets you interested in the topic so that for the next little while you'll stick around and you'll go back to your airports and your families and your staff and you will say, I have seen the future and there's work we have to do. I want to share with you just a sampling of industries in the world. You can relate to all of these. But there's something very interesting happening with every one of these. Something very consistent and abnormal. And something that is connecting them all now. This is just a sample. We could have almost every industry in the world up on this slide right now. And what I'm about to share with you would be consistent among these. Anybody would like to guess, what is the similarity between all these industries as we sort of head into the third decade of the 21st century? What do you think about when you look at these? Do you think there's a commonality? I mean, you can shout it out. Disruptive technology and information, these are all components of it for sure. Anything else that is interesting? For sure, the internet is a core backbone to every one of these industries. These are all right. You're all right. You're actually onto it. But I want to just push that even further. There's something much more central and deeper. These are all becoming technology companies. Right? These are no longer banks or hotels or taxis or TV channels. These are technology companies that just happen to be, as a byproduct, or as a primary product, a primary product, the actual service that they provide, right? Now, let me give you an example. Why do I say that? Why are these now technology companies, right? Well, we'll take some obvious ones. Right up here I have taxis, right? The world's largest taxi company today doesn't own a single taxi, right? The world's largest taxi company in the world doesn't really hire anybody. It doesn't have any taxi drivers, really, right? The world's largest hotel chain in the world today doesn't own a single hotel. The world's largest hotel chain doesn't have any staff. They have a tiny little group of people, but they have the largest hotel chain in the world. They are technology companies, technology platforms that are facilitating, they're orchestrating activities that happen to be taxis, transportation services and hotels. These are Uber and Lyft and Airbnb. All of these industries are changing from core businesses into technology platforms. And that's a significant change. It means that the incumbent group of businesses, I mean, if you're Yellow Cabs, you freak out about this, right? If you're Hilton or Sheraton or Marriott, you freak out about this because the world you've known for the last 100 years or 200 years is basically vanishing. And in fact, if you don't act, your business is going to shut down. The businesses we know today, the big brand businesses, if they don't radically change, are going to shut down. And the banking industry knows this. The banking industry knows this. They know, for example, when the banking industry meets in San Francisco or in Los Angeles or New York, what are they talking about? They're talking about the existential threat to banks, right? You know, with the emergence of cryptocurrency and something called the blockchain, that's a crazy word, they realize suddenly, holy, everything we've ever known for the last 100 years, 200 years is about to change. We become irrelevant if we don't change. And it's a massive thing. It's trillions of dollars. It's millions of jobs. It's transformational. I want to talk about that today. Let's look at an interesting slide, which is the future of work. The future of work is really fascinating. There's some predictions that within 20 to 30 years, half the jobs we do right now will be obsolete, whether because they're not necessary, because robots can do them, or artificial intelligence. It means half this room, half of us, won't be able to do the jobs we're currently doing because they will be no longer necessary. I'm going to talk about self-driving cars in a few moments, but I'm going to give you a little sort of data point here just to kind of get you get this queued up and get you interested in this topic. There are 7 million truck drivers in America. Okay? Yeah. After the government, which is 22 million workers, truck drivers are the second largest number of employees in America. Truck drivers, right? They're all going to be out of jobs. Trucks are going to drive themselves. 7 million people won't have jobs, right? This is not some abstract, crazy talk from me. This is going to happen. And so the world of work is changing because of this phenomena that I'm talking about today, this digital transformation. So I want to talk about sort of 9-to-5 jobs. Who needs a 9-to-5 job? That's what we've all grown up on. This is what we believe is the status quo, right? Well, we're going to give up our job. We're going to do a few little jobs. I'm going to share those little jobs with you. They all didn't exist. Some of them didn't exist 2 years ago. I mean, this is really current, right? The first thing for a few hours a day, we're going to drive a car. Any one of us can do that, right? You just have to know how to drive a car. There's really no other qualification, right? So we're going to drive for a couple hours. We're going to use Lyft. We're going to, at night, maybe 3 times a week, we're going to cook a meal for a family, or we're going to have a couple of people come to our home and we're going to cook for them. That's not for everybody, by the way. I get it. Some people like doing this, though. Imagine if you travel abroad. Rather than going to a restaurant, have food with a family, right? People are doing this all over the world. It's quite a big phenomenon. Maybe some of you have done it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to be in San Francisco. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cook for somebody else. I'm going to make a bit of money doing that. Again, all I have to do is know how to make a scrambled egg or a piece of chicken or something, and I can serve food and make money. Next thing, I got an extra room in my house, so I'm going to rent it every night. Right? That doesn't require any work. The only thing I have to do there is make sure that it's clean every day, and I can make a decent amount of money just doing that. If I have a bit of money in the bank, I'm going to be a loaner. I'm going to be a lender, I should say. I'm going to use part of my money. I'm going to give money to a lending club, and they're going to give out the money. I'm going to get a small interest rate on that. I can do that right now, rather than having my money sit in a bank. There's other stuff I might lend. I might have a bicycle that I can lend to somebody, or a shovel, or a special tool. So I'm going to lend that and charge for that, right? I'm not doing much. All I'm doing is lending it. I'm getting this income from it. In fact, I have a little bit of extra time, so I'm going to do some errands. I'm going to stuff some envelopes, or I'm going to pick up some things for somebody and bring them to their house. I'm going to participate in what's called Fiverr. Okay, it's not a lot of work every day, right? I don't go to an office. I don't report to anybody. I just do these things. Now, how much do you think I can earn doing this? Like, just in the way I described, based on all of that, what could be my income, do you think, in 2017 if I do this? What do you guess? 55,000, that's a good guess. Thank you. Yeah, but just on the average, as I talked about, a few hours a day on each of these, barely. 70,000? 70,000, 55,000? Do I have higher? Do I have higher? Yeah, that's very, yes, absolutely right. So it depends on the city, the marketplace, the country. There's lots of variables. But just generally, if we commit ourselves to this, we can actually make $100,000. It's a six-figure income from doing this. No more getting to the office. No more getting up early in the morning. Make your own hours. Report to nobody. This is all enabled by digital transformation. You couldn't do this just a few years ago, right? And hundreds of thousands of Americans are waking up and doing this every day, right? This is not something that just a few people are doing. You know, this including selling stuff on eBay, right? And all the other bits and pieces people do. If you do this right and strategize, we are changing the workforce entirely by moving to new models of working. Just as an example of the transformation that is underway right now. Now, what is the ultimate impact? How can we distill down this transformation into three things? It will change, and this is how it relates to you as executives and leaders. First of all, it can radically change the customer experience, and I'll show you examples of that. It will change how you operate and run your organizations, because they have to respond to the new marketplace, the new reality, and the new technologies that will be supporting your business. And finally, digital transformation will radically and is radically changing the very nature and the existence of your business, right? Digital transformation is destroying businesses very quickly, by the way, but it's also creating brand new industries. I just showed you just a few examples of industries like the sharing economy that didn't exist 5 years ago and now are a big part of our economy and growing globally. You know what I love about these? Is not so much that, you know, years ago we used to say, well, this is an American thing. Right? For the first time, this is global. Right? Now, as I travel around the world, whether I go to China or the Middle East or Europe or around the United States, Canada, I see a common thread here. We're embracing this. This is the first time we've had industries and change that have had global impact almost on day one. So these are the three areas. I think everyone here sitting in this room looking at this slide can say, I can relate to one of those three things. My guess is that you probably relate to more than one of them. That if you run an airport, all of those three things really, really matter. Right? Really, really matter. Okay, why is this happening? I thought this might be interesting to you. To give this presentation some credibility, you might ask, you know, well, this, you know, what's going on here? Well, you know, some of it you can guess. You know, despite what we see on the TV, the world is more peaceful, right? Despite what we see on the TV, the world is more educated. For the first time, there is now less than 10% of the world in poverty, in extreme poverty. Now, I'm not that old, but when I was growing up, we used to use third world. It's considered negative now. Third is 30%. 30% of the world used to be in extreme poverty. 30%. It's now about 9%. So we're radically changing the economics of the world by reducing extreme poverty. And extreme poverty, by the way, will vanish over the next 10 to 20 years. It won't exist in the world in our lifetimes. Pretty impressive. So that's part of the phenomena. There's something else going on, which is basically just about computing power. This is what I get excited about. I'm a computer guy. This is the exciting stuff. But you know, you all experience this because you have the world's information at your fingertips right now, in your pocket or on the table, right? But I'm interested in how did it happen? Where did it come from? And this is the most important slide in my life. This is the most important graph, I should say, in my life. By the way, in every presentation, you have at least one graph. This is the only graph I'm going to show today, right? Very simple to interpret. What are we looking at? Yes, Moore's law. Somebody said it. Yeah. But basically, this is the idea that every 18 months, effectively, processing power in a chip doubles its ability to process. It doubles its power every 18 months. So this has been happening pretty consistently since since about 1970. And but let's get more specific. So in 1970, the first microchips come out. Microchips really are the game changer here, right? We go from rooms full of old tech and valves down to things you can barely see, or you can hold it you can place it at the top of your fingertip. These are the microchips that emerged in the 1970s. What do you think was the first practical use of the microchip? Anybody guess? Calculator. Awesome. You've been in one of my presentations. Usually people try a lot of things before they get to the calculator. Thank you. You got it spot on. Calculator was the first use of the microchip. Very practical, right? We take it for granted today. And then, so 1970, 1975, there's some magical new technology come out. Anybody know? It was a communication device. Anybody know what it was? The what? So the phone, yeah. So you got, right. A far cry from the beautiful little smartphones we have right now. But that's one of, I'm actually thinking something even more magical, something where an object could reappear anywhere else in the world. A fax machine, yes. Fax machines changed the world. They really did. I don't see them too often, but occasionally I see a fax machine. Right? You're all thinking to yourself, I have a fax machine. Still useful, but not necessary. There's lots of ways you can deal with that. Yesterday, I was talking to an insurance provider, and they wanted to see a copy of a purchase order for something. I said, I have to find a scanner. I said, what the hell am I talking about? Just take a photograph of it. Right? It's like, even I sometimes have not caught up with contemporary technology. We don't need scanners. Just take a picture of the contract. Okay, so we got in 1970s, 1980s, we've got fax machines. We start to see in the early 80s the first PCs. IBM sort of builds the first affordable desktop computer. In the 90s, we start to connect these computers together, and so now we have the first networks. In the mid-90s, something very important happens. You can see that a lot of the acceleration here is very much equated to the curve as it starts to go up. And you can get what happened in the 1990s that changed the world. The internet, absolutely. The internet happened, and it's still changing. By the way, we're only in the first chapter of the internet. Right? The stuff that the internet will do, the big stuff that it will do, hasn't happened yet. Right? Part of my presentation today says the world of work and the world of business is going to be and is being radically changed because the internet is enabling orchestration at a global scale. But we're only in chapter 1. I mean, what will happen next will blow our minds. Now, we go from the internet, we're quickly into Web 1.0 websites, and we go to Web 2.0 interactive websites. In the early mid-2000s, we see smartphones. Here we're in 2015. We're starting to see everyone, about half the world getting connected. Half the world. Here's a data point that completely stuns me every single day. Half the world does not have access to the internet. We all take it for granted that everyone has smartphones and they can access CNN.com or Fox News, whatever it is that you read, or you go to online. We all take that for granted. 50% of the world wakes up. It's about 3.6 billion people and don't connect to the internet. They don't have access to it. This is why companies like Google and Google and Facebook and others are trying to figure out low-cost ways of bringing the internet to the rest of the world because, wow, half your marketplace isn't even online yet, right? And when Africa and India and China start to get online in bulk, in billions of people, that'll be game-changing too, right? English will not be the dominant language of the internet. Mandarin will be, right? The internet will be Chinese. Little detours there. Getting back on this slide, in 2015, we have artificial intelligence, we have 3D printing, we have robotics, we have self-driving cars. Everyone in America has a smartphone, and the curve is still going up. What happens after 2020? Anybody know? Nobody knows. Perfect. Not only do we not know, but look where the curve is. If you can imagine right now the change that's happening, and I mean, I don't know if you're feeling sort of exhausted by it. I'm exhausted by it, keeping up, right? I just mastered Facebook, and then Snapchat came out. I'm just kidding. But that's the type of speed and velocity that change is happening and being adopted. You might say, well, it's pretty impressive that 1.5 billion people use Facebook. If something better comes out, those 1.5 billion will change in just a few months. It's very fickle. The movement, the change costs are very low. And so when the next big disruptor comes out, things will change yet again. After 2020, we are off the charts. It is almost impossible to tell where the heck we are heading. And that gives me goosebumps for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm excited by tech. I'm an innovator, love the promise. But secondly, that uncertainty is very concerning. The uncertainty about where the heck are things headed. Like, how will we deal with information overload? What jobs will our children do? What will the world do? Right? And so many, many more questions emerge. And this is part of the reason why. The correlation between connectivity and processing power to all this innovation that you're seeing. Everything effectively is going to bits. Now, what I want to share with you is a phase we're in, and you're all familiar with this concept of the Industrial Revolution. Right? You went in school, you heard about the Industrial Revolution. Do you know now there are 3 Industrial Revolutions, and in fact, we are on the brink now of the 4th Industrial Revolution. So a little history lesson here. I thought you might be interested in this. It'll all come back to you once I start talking. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. 1700s, late 1700s, we start to have the first Industrial Revolution. We go from agricultural world, start seeing industry for the first time, mainly because of steam power. Right? We're burning coal, boiling water, creating steam, and now we can power machines to do what used to be done by hand. And that is pretty radical. It largely starts in the United Kingdom, Britain, and it then expands largely a little bit eastward, but mostly westward, and here into the United States. As you get into, about 100 years later, we get into the second Industrial Revolution. And this is, in the late 1800s, extreme mass production for the very first time. Factories producing identical products at reasonably similar quality over and over again, and pushing them out into the marketplace. That increased incomes. It resulted in societies that had greater demands. The people wanted to be healthier, and so it drove medical research. People got healthier, and the lifespan doubled. By the way, if all of us were here about 150 years ago, we could look forward to a wonderful, prosperous life that would peak at about 40 years old. The lifespan of people in the West in just a little over 100 years ago was 40, right? Today, in America, it's approaching 80. Pretty remarkable. If you hear people say things are terrible today, right? Right. If you were 38 in 1900, you had 2 years left. I'm in my 40s. I feel pretty young. I can't even believe, I can't imagine a world in which 40 was the peak. By the way, that's the best case scenario. Just for fun, if you want to think it like that, there were many parts of the world where the average lifespan was in the late 20s. Not 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about 100, 150 years ago. So this industrial age, the second industrial age, resulted in incredible advances in society. Clean water, or relatively clean water, sanitation, right? Sanitation. We take for granted bathrooms and toilets. There's still parts of the world where there's insufficient sanitation, right? There are more smartphones in India than toilets, right? The proportion of people to toilets in India is not something we should be horrified by it, and it's a major contributor towards poverty and disease, right? So we have a lot of work still to do, but we're moving rapidly. We're moving fast. Now, in the 1970s, just like I described before, we had the emergence of the microchip. So the third industrial revolution happens in about 1969, 1970, and all of us have been living through the information age, right? The introduction of the personal computer, the microchip, now the internet, now smartphones. And we have been living and prospering through this third industrial revolution. Your organizations use databases and networks, and you access information, you input information. Your customers pay by credit card, right? You look up your bank balances online. You know, you do customer service on the phone, probably interacting with a computer, not with a human being. These are all the products of the third industrial revolution. So finally, we are now we're on the cusp of the eve of the fourth industrial revolution, which will again change the world as did the first three industrial revolutions. The fourth industrial revolution is the merging of the physical, digital, and biological, right? And we are still at a point in the evolution of that where we don't actually know necessarily the ultimate consequence of this. But let me give you an example. During the third industrial revolution, when a machine that builds cars would stop working, you know, the machine would go off, humans would go and fix the machines, right? A group of engineers would go and fix the machine. The production line would all shut down, and maybe be down for 3 or 4 hours. Your time is money. You fix the machine, and now it starts to produce again. In the fourth industrial revolution, machines will fix themselves. They will be artificially intelligent enough. This is happening today. It's not like I'm telling you something that's going to happen in 20 years. In major production lines and big car facilities today, when a piece of machinery breaks, and by the way, it may not even get to the point of breaking because the technology is so advanced it can predict when the break will happen and fix it or preempt it by doing proactive work. And so machines will fix machines, software will fix itself, right? So digital, interacting with the physical, will change the nature of our role. We'll keep these, you know, mass production factory lines working 24/7, change the very nature of how we run these machines. Now, think about this. Machines will build themselves too, right? I mean, I don't know if you've seen the videos of big machines 3D printing houses. I mean, there are now machines which will print an entire house without human intervention, layer by layer, right? So we are entering the fourth industrial revolution, and it is characterized by significant use of computing power, digitization, artificial intelligence, robots, and soon the integration of biology too. Some of it you are seeing, some of the manifestations. I got this device for this holiday for Christmas. This is Google Home. Anybody got Google Home? Or Alexa? He's got Alexa, okay. Alexa's pretty neat. It's this home little device. You talk to it, you know, play some music, turn my lights on, lower my air conditioner, tune my TV into Netflix. You know, all pretty good voice recognition, integration of devices in your house. Again, it's like a novelty because it's just new. And when I asked who had it, only a few hands went up. I'm certain in a couple of years when I ask the same question, all your hands will go up, and you'll be like, of course my home is smart. Of course all my devices talk to each other, talk to my smartphone. I just bought a car. I can control it on my cell phone, on my smartphone. It's pretty awesome, right? I can get it ready. I can turn it on. I can get the seats heated. I can send a map from my computer in my office to my car, so when I get my car is ready to take me. You know, so these things that almost seemed science fiction just a few years ago will become very much commonplace over the next few years. Anybody played with chatbots? So I bet you have. You don't even know. You know, there's a concept called the Turing Test. Who knows the Turing Test? Alan Turing broke the German Enigma, right, during World War II. Basically, he helped to win World War II because he figured out through computing power what the code system was, and a little bit of luck too, bit of human luck. But the Turing Test, which is named after Alan Turing, says that if you interact with the computer, you can't see the computer, and you can't tell it's a computer, then it's as good as a human, right? As in, let's say you, for example, on your phone, you message somebody, you say, hey, how's your day? And the response is, I'm going well, how about you? You respond, I'm in Monterey enjoying it. He says, oh, that sounds nice. If to you, your impression is that this is another human being, you have passed, the technology has passed what's called a Turing Test. We are now about to realize that through chatbots. So our typical experience with customer service is either humans on the phone or a search engine or a knowledge site. Soon you will be able to, on your smartphone, interact with a messaging service and get the responses you need as if a human is on the other side. Now this already exists. Many organizations use this. It's not massively commonplace, but you can, if you want. Probably some of your favorite providers have chatbots. You just add the name to your messenger like you would another human, and you can interact. You just type a question. Hey, do you have any specials today? You know, or do you have a Audi A4, in stock, and it'll come back and say, actually, we're getting in one next week. This is the price, whatever. It'll be a computer. There's no humans involved in this, right? This is the fourth industrial revolution. Now, I have the privilege every day of being the Chief Information Officer and Chief Technology Officer for the city of Palo Alto. Very, very proud of that privilege. And I couldn't do a presentation on digital transformation if I didn't tell you a little bit about what we're up to. I think you might be interested in what we're doing at the city of Palo Alto. We get a lot of attention. Silicon Valley was born in Palo Alto. We call it the birthplace and the heart of Silicon Valley. So we get disproportionate attention around the world. I was amazing. I joined the city 5 years ago, and within a few months I was asked to go to Washington to be part of a conference called Beyond the Beltway. It's an attempt by the folks inside DC to have perspectives from outside of DC, right? And so I went over and I was on this panel like this, and there was myself. Palo Alto has only about 67,000 people. And during the day it doubles because we have workers who come in. So we're about 150,000 people during the day. That's a small city, right? And I'm sitting at the table with the CIOs from some of the biggest states in the nation and a couple of very big cities like Boston, New York, state of Florida, those type of these are people who manage billions of dollars of IT investment, hundreds of thousands hundreds of projects per month. And have they do a lot of important things. There's little old me. I'm from a small town in California. I'm sitting up there. I'm thinking, who would want to ask me any questions? I said, I don't have any, compared to New York City, I don't have a story to tell. Just a small little Northern California town. And there's a big audience, about 2,000 people. And we all say a few words about what we do and what's important to us. And at the end, the moderator says, we'd like to ask the audience, has anybody got any questions? So the first hand goes up and they ask, I'd like to ask Jonathan a question. What are you doing about this? And I was like, I'm excited. I got the first question. Hand goes up, I get the second question. Starts to get embarrassing. I get all the questions, right? And none of the other guys do. I say, would you like to ask these other folks? At that point, I realized that people had a certain expectation from the birthplace of Silicon Valley, and I've felt that responsibility now for 5 years to live up to that and to do interesting things, to bring technology to bear on the functioning of a city. So the one area that I want to share with you today, sort of a specific focus, is transportation, right? And the reason why I want to talk to you about, seems appropriate, we're all in transportation in this room, right? I want to talk about cars, not planes yet. We're going to talk about cars, is because this is an area that impacts every one of us. I'll make a bet. I bet almost everybody here has a car. Probably everybody has a car. We all deal with traffic. We all get frustrated with traffic. We're all involved in cars. Secondly, the Earth is heating up. I don't know who you've spoken to or who you get your advice from, but the scientific consensus is the Earth is heating up. 2016 was the hottest year in recorded history. The Earth is now, over the last 100 years, over 1 degree hotter than it was 100 years ago. And then you think, oh, thank goodness, only 1 degree. That's good news. I feel better now. It's only 1. People are going crazy. They're saying the water's rising. There's more storms. It's only 1 degree. Okay, let me put this in perspective. The recent climate change agreement that was agreed in Paris, that's at risk a little bit, by the way, says that we need to cap the temperature of the world, the change in temperature, by 2 degrees. Because, right, so remember, we're already 1 degree hotter. We have to stop at 2 degrees. Once you go more than 2 degrees, we're heading into 2.5, 3 degrees hotter than 100 years ago. the ability for the Earth to sustain life diminishes quickly, right? So this is the most important topic of our time in the future, right? If we get to 3 degrees within a few years, could happen in our lifetimes, probably in our children's, the Earth is on a trajectory that is very pessimistic. It will not be able to sustain life, plant life, humans, anything, right? We will look like Venus or the surface of Mars in a few thousand years if that's where things are headed. We have it within our control, though, to limit this. We think so. If we hit 3 degrees, we're kind of out of luck. And as Stephen Hawking says, we better look for another place to live. We will need to spend the next 200 years building rockets and looking for a place where we can send humans, because the Earth will no longer be inhabitable. Now, why do I share that very grim story with you? First, you need to know about it. You need to take it seriously. But secondly, the place where we can make the biggest difference is with our cars, right? It's with transportation. And that's why I wanted to share with you, because, you know, I'm a person who loves to go after solutions. Don't you like to fix stuff? Right? And so how do we fix this damn problem, which is, you know, is going to impact our beautiful planet? Well, we've got to start with transportation. Where do you think, by the way, the other area is? The 2 top areas. Anybody guess? Not manufacturing, no. Cows, yes. Thank you. Good, good. Some, yeah. Folks, you know your stuff. Wow, this is doing my part. Good, good for you. So, you know, I'm not going to even broach that topic because I'm not even, I can't get into it. I have no competency on it. But basically, we shouldn't eat meat. We shouldn't eat red meat. We shouldn't eat cows. The second biggest contributor to global warming is methane. It comes from cows. We're doing, as the world modernizes and societies build cities and get more prosperous, we eat more meat. We got to figure that out. One day, somebody's going to be bold enough to say, hey, guys, we got to stop eating as much meat, right? I'm not going to be that guy. But I want to talk about cars, because I can actually impact that in a positive way. Let's talk about stuff that's going on. I want to introduce you to a concept called ACEs, right? So A-C-E-S. Now, you can take ACEs, write it down, and tonight at dinner or tomorrow when you go home to your families, you can talk about ACEs, and they'll think you're, like, amazing. Like, wow, that's awesome. So real easy to remember, and it's kind of encapsulates, the future of transportation in a really succinct way. The first thing is the A, autonomous. I'm here to tell you today, 31st of January 2017, cars will drive themselves. Right? It's no longer speculation. It's not hypothetical. Cars will totally drive themselves, and it's going to happen faster than we think. Some of you already probably have a car that drives itself on the highway. I have a buddy, got a Tesla X recently. When he goes off his small streets and goes onto the interstate or the highway, the car, he no longer interacts. The car drives itself to the next exit. So cars are driving themselves, and they will not, my prediction, and I'm on record saying this, so you can come and get me in about 20 years and say, you were wrong. But I'm on record in saying that humans will not be allowed to drive within a couple of decades, right? It'll be illegal. When you want to drive a car, you'll need to go to a racetrack or to an entertainment area and say, I want to actually sit in the seat and drive a car and move the gears and, you know, put the accelerator and the brake on. No, humans won't be able to drive cars. Why do I think that to be the case? I base it on 2 things. Number one is I've been in a level 4 self-driving car, and it is totally convincing. It feels more confident and safer than humans when I drive with them. So if you're with a friend in a car and they're driving and they're like, oh, sorry about that, or, you know, whoops, or oh, pay attention, right? I mean, you know how difficult it's, we're on a wing and a prayer in a car with another individual. And so, you know, hopefully every time we get safe. I've been in a self-driving car. Computers have driven the car. It felt totally safe, and I was like, I would rather be in this vehicle than having a buddy of mine who's maybe had 1 beer drive, or just a buddy who's a total driver, right? Now, the second reason I'm confident about this is more grim. Almost 1.5 million humans die in car accidents every single year. In this room, you know people who have died in car accidents. I know you don't have to put up your hand, nothing like that. It's devastating. It's tragic. In the world, almost 1.5 million humans die in car accidents. The amount of injuries is in the tens and tens of millions. And it happens because of human error, because we make mistakes, because we're human. We aren't very good at multitasking. We're not very good at fast decision making when you're in very rapidly changing circumstances. So computers are really good at that. Computers are really excellent at being able to make millions of decisions quickly, interact with other cars, send messages to the car, and basically reduce, almost eliminate deaths and injury. Let me just share with you a little fun fact, right? That's a really good story, right? That's a really positive thing. I'm very excited by the fact that we could save hundreds of thousands of children's lives from car accidents if we had self-driving cars, right? There's an industry that isn't particularly excited about this. It's the insurance industry, right? You probably know people who are in the insurance industry. When you insure your car and you don't make a claim, which most people don't if you add up the millions of people with insurance companies make a lot of money. When accidents start to go away, we won't need premiums, or we'll need very small ones. The insurance company is in trouble. The insurance company is in trouble because that's where they make a lot of money, right? Again, much like the banking industry, if you go to one of their conferences, if you go to an insurance company conference somewhere in California or in the world today, one of the topics, no doubt, more than one, is going to be, how are we going to make money when cars drive themselves, right? So, again, it's not an abstract topic. This is really happening, right? They're really thinking about this. If you're Ford, right, and you make millions of cars every year because people buy cars, and you employ hundreds of thousands of people, and you have factories in America, you have factories around the world, and you look out and you say, in the future, people aren't going to buy cars. What will we do? The CEO of Ford is on record saying we won't be making cars in the future. How can it be that the CEO of Ford says we won't be making cars in the future? Because they see the future and realize it's shared fleets of self-driving cars, right? General Motors knows this. This is why these cars are investing in Lyft and in other shared vehicle systems. They have to completely rethink, because of the fourth industrial revolution, they have to completely rethink about what their purpose is in life. I mean, those must be some very sobering conversations. You're in the boardroom at General Motors and you're like, we're not going to make cars. What, I don't think necessarily, Amazon thought they were going to be in the movie business. Or Apple just announced they're going to start to make TV shows, right? You're going to find businesses doing things that they never did in the past. General Motors is going to do things that have nothing to do with cars because they have to, right? It'll change those businesses. That, by the way, that's just the A. That's autonomous. C for ACES is connected. Cars will be connected. Most of the world's leading car manufacturers have their innovation labs in Palo Alto. It's kind of one of the just fascinating things about the little town I come from. And so I get to have the opportunity to meet with them. We have little huddles. We talk about the future. And they tell me with confidence, within about 2 years, most cars coming off the production line will be connected cars. Cars will no longer be sort of ignorant to the world. They will be connected to the internet, and it'll be very valuable. My new car is remarkable in terms of the information it consumes. Everything from the weather to upcoming accidents to better routes to drive to all sorts of warnings and things. I'm amazed the networks it connects. A few months ago, the Audi, who have an innovation lab in Silicon Valley, they called me up and they said, John, we have our latest SUV. We want to bring it over to City Hall. We'd like you to take a look at it. I don't know if they knew me or not, but I love new cars. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good way to spend my afternoon, taking a look at a brand new, state-of-the-art, fully loaded Audi. So they bring it over, and they call me from the parking lot. They said, come on downstairs. And I said, great, went downstairs. And I walked to the car, and they hand me the keys. They said, well, we want you to drive it. I said, we're going to drive this thing? Cool. It's getting better and better. I get into the driver's seat. They said, what we want you to do is just drive around downtown Palo Alto. I said, sure, I'd love to do that. And this is a beautiful car. I mean, this is the screen is, the whole dashboard is a digital screen. There's no more dials. It's completely just a large computer screen. It's got like, much like the new 7087s and the A380s, like the lighting is mood lighting. It's just beautiful to see that inside the cockpit of the car. And so we're driving around and we come up to a traffic signal. And the traffic signal is red, so I park at the light, and they're not saying anything. It's like a little surprise. I look at the dashboard, and on the digital dashboard is a traffic signal with a red light. So it's an image, right? And on the right of it has a countdown. It's like 20, 19, 18, 17. I realize it's counting down the time the light is going to be red. And when this image goes to 0, the light goes to green, I can drive. The car is connected to the traffic signals in Palo Alto. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Seems like kind of a novelty. It's not a novelty, right? Turns out that when people stop at traffic signals and they're sitting at red light, what do? They take their smartphones, they do texting or check. They turn around and they talk to children, they put lipstick on, they look at their hair, they get distracted. And a couple of things happen. Number one is the light goes red, you're green, you're distracted and people start honking, right? Or people think you're driving, they drive into the back of you and hit you. You know, there's a bumper crash. There's another or. You see it go green. In Northern California, everybody's all polite. Nobody's honking, so they're waiting for you to drive. So sit at a light, it goes green. You're like, I'm looking at my text messages, like, oh, throw my phone onto the seat, and then I drive. That bit of time between the light being green and me driving, it might be a second, it might be 2 seconds, but if you add it over multiple traffic signals, it adds up into a lot of lost time. If we know when the light is going green, we're not going to be distracted, because if it's 4 seconds to go, you're not going to pick up your phone. You're going to wait and then drive. Right? Add that up and traffic will move more efficiently. So at the City of Palo Alto, we now have all our traffic signals are connected traffic signals and send this information to new connected cars. The E is for electric. So if you're keeping track, right, with ACES, E is electric. And we are in the midst of a great transformation to a electric economy, right? In Palo Alto, we're creating all sorts of incentives to get people off of gas. And so if a new home is built, you can only have electric utilities. Gas is bad. But electric is kind of cool, too, because we got this incredible free resource up in the sky called the sun. And it's abundant. It's going to last a while. And if we put solar and everything, we effectively can get free energy, right? And it's one of the great promises of the future that we haven't been able to fulfill yet is, why don't we just power our homes and our cars and our electricity with the sun? We'd never have to burn coal or oil or gas again, right? We wouldn't have to pay an electrical bill again. Right? Why don't we do this? Well, the answer, of course, like everything else, is economics. It's never been cheap enough. It's much cheaper. Actually, gas is cheaper, has at times been cheaper than water, right? Or, oil is cheaper than water. Coal is really abundant and cheap. There's tons of, we've about 400 years of coal left, apparently. And so as long as we can keep mining it, it's a great resource. But it's really crappy on the environment, right? You look at coal plants being built in China, and actually they're going to stop building them, which is a big surprise. But they create all sorts of toxins in the atmosphere, destroy the air, create asthma and other breathing conditions, and people die, right? And so coal is not good. Oil is not good. Oil has not been good because it has maintained a conflict environment between the West and the Middle East for a long time. And we need to shift that paradigm. We've done very well. America now is a net positive producer of oil. We produce more than we import for the very first time. But as a consequence, we're digging up holes all around the country, which look ugly if you've ever flown over it, but are also polluting communities, which is bad. Bottom line, the fossil fuels are really bad, and the quicker we can get away from them, the better. But forget about, if you don't even care about that stuff, wouldn't it be great to have like solar in your house and you wouldn't have to pay electrical bill? In fact, you create so much power that you provide it back to other people and they pay you, that your house could become a power plant. This is happening in Palo Alto. Some of our businesses generate so much solar power that they put it back on the grid and we pay them for it. They get a check from a utility. How kind of screwed up 180 kind of world in reverse is that? But that's kind of cool. So the reason is we haven't moved fast enough that we haven't had the economics. Recently, we didn't talk about this, but around about 2015, 2016, the price of per unit energy for solar is the same as coal for the very first time in history. And we're going to see now in the next year, 2, 3 years, that the unit of energy for equivalent for coal and solar, the solar power will be less cost. And then we will see it skyrocket. I love to share that because I'm hopeful that it will be reflected in my share purchases. I still, my Solar City stock is not doing so well right now. And so the prediction is I'm buying a lot of it in the hope that over the next few years it is going to boom like the oil industry did over the last four decades, which is likely. But don't take that as a stock tip. That would be massively unethical of me. I just shared a personal story. It's not advice. Okay. Finally, S, if you're keeping track of ACEs, S is for shared, right? Which means that vehicles won't be owned. They will be shared. It'll be more like the Uber model, right? Where when you want to get from A to Z, you will call up on your phone a shared vehicle. Now, let's talk about a few characteristics of this. The first thing is, probably most of you have at some point in your life called a Uber or Lyft or other shared vehicle, and hopefully you've had a good experience. I generally have a great experience. It doesn't matter what airport I land in Europe or in North America. I get off the plane, I call up Uber immediately, and then the car is waiting for me, and it's a nice, pleasant trip. Mostly, right? Now, the question is, why do I do that all the time? Why do I even own a car? Like, it's such a nice experience. I can check my phone, I can have a chat, I can sit and relax, close my eyes if I want to. All the things you'd love to do in a car, but you can't when you're driving. Why don't we do it? Because if you do the economics, comes back to economics, the price of owning your own car is still lower than the price of taking Uber every single day for everything you need, right? If you add up the ownership of a car, gas, tax, registration, repairs, the insurance, all that, it's still cheaper than the average Uber ride of whatever, $11, $12, added up 3 or 4 or 5 times a day over the course of a year, right? So the question is, I think you know the answer. If the cost of Uber was less than a car, would you want to own a car anymore? I think the answer for me is probably going to be no. There's a lot of people who've already made this determination. You know, folks who live in San Francisco, New York City, Boston. There's a lot of folks who've already made the decision. You know, millennials they're saying, owning a car seems, you know, it's like expensive. It's like it's a waste of time. I can have an accident. There's all sorts of reasons why I don't want a car. I would probably make that choice too. My guess is a lot of us will start to make that choice when the price is right. The reason the price is not right is because you still need human beings to drive shared vehicles. There's still a human driving an Uber. When this will change is when cars drive themselves. So when you call up a shared vehicle, it's going to be a robot. It's going to be a computer driving it. There'll be no labor costs or any of the incremental costs of labor. So the cost of actually taking an Uber ride will drop massively, and it'll become more popular. This is not a secret by Uber. They tell you, we have no interest in having drivers. Our vision of the future are self-driving vehicles, a shared global fleet that picks up people, drops up people, picks up objects, drops objects, wherever they need to go. It's going to be low cost, frequent. People will stop owning cars. Now, big picture. So we have self-driving cars. People don't own cars. Now the cars are driving themselves. They don't really need parking spaces. Self-driving cars can drive all the time, assuming they can get a power source occasionally. How many parking spaces do you think there are in the United States? What would be your guess? A lot. But how many? It turns out there's about 1 billion parking spaces. 1 billion you know, that's got to be the worst use of land in the universe, right? You look at a Walmart or a Target, you know, after it's closed. It's the gorgeous earth that we had, which had trees and wildlife and everything. It's just paved over with cement or whatever it is, right? We probably don't need to build more parking spaces, and over time we will remove parking spaces, right? Parking lots won't be necessary. Multi-story parking spaces won't be necessary. So that's the first impact. We already talked about that insurance will have to change. A self-driving vehicle doesn't need a traffic signal. I shared with you the fun story about a connected car and the fact that I had to, I could see it turning red, but a self-driving car doesn't care. A self-driving car doesn't care about signposts or stop signs, right? In fact, self-driving cars don't even care about intersections because they will negotiate and not have to stop. Cars will just go through the intersection continuously, right? Self-driving vehicles will drive fast and close together, and we will see likely the end of congestion. The notion of traffic jams will go away. Hopefully that's good news, right? The changes ahead are dramatic. They're going to happen fast. You will remember this presentation not too distant future when you start to see this stuff begin to happen. I sit on the front seat of the future in Silicon Valley, being CTO there in Palo Alto, and I see this stuff happening. I see self-driving cars pass my window. I'm in cars being driven around by computers. I've seen the stop signals in the car itself. So, we're having so much fun that our time is almost up. So I'm going to have to skip a section here. I thought I would cover more, but I'm realizing that you want to get a coffee and stuff like that. So I'm going to skip the data piece just for a second and end my presentation by touching on the topic of digital airports. Because I think I have a suspicion it could be useful to you or interesting. It'll tie your world into the world I've been talking about for the last hour. And then I just would love your questions or even maybe your criticism or comments on what I've shared with you today. So like every part of the economy, airports and airplanes are well within the scope of digital transformation. Some of it you just haven't maybe put it into the category of this big topic. But major airports, most of them now have overt, communicated digital strategies, right? Heathrow Airport, one of the biggest in the world, is a perfect use case if you wanted to explore what they're doing in terms of their mission to become a digital airport, to transform using digitization, to remember, do three things: improve the customer experience, improve operational processes, and finally, to ensure that they have a sustainable business model when their existing business models vanish, right? Because they still got to get in revenue. You still got to make the whole thing work. So one of the clearest ways of understanding the future is to look at the economics. That's a core part of my message today. If you want to understand the future, follow the money. And so airports today internationally spend about $9 billion on this digital transformation phenomena. This is some data I got from a reliable source. $9 billion. By 2025, it's $14 billion in digital transformation. So airports get this. The airports are going to invest in technology and digital, specifically in this case, digital technology. So that's the first thing. Realize the numbers are there. They're going to be big numbers. You're going to be part of spending that money, right? The vendor community is going to be benefiting from that money being spent too. And so I have 4 examples of how digital transformation is showing up in the airport realm. Now, whilst it might seem a little bit basic relative to the other things I shared with you today, one of the most clear places you will see big changes in the web presence, in the web assets. I'm using Heathrow because they really are pushing the envelope on this. And so if you go to the Heathrow website, it's all about digital facilitation, everything from helping you transfer to, if your flight's been delayed or you missed your flight, getting you onto a different flight, things like finding your baggage, and then it's got the obvious things around booking a flight and flight times. But a very interactive, rich experience about data that can help the passenger get from A to Z. So focusing on your web presence is a real core part of your digital transformation. People want a highly positive, rich data-based environment when they go to your websites. The website also clearly should be accessible from a mobile phone. Most people who use the internet use it on a mobile device today, right? Over 50% access the internet on a mobile device, and that's increasing. So you really kind of need to start to shift your focus from the web world to the mobile world. I think the best case scenario is that you have sites that are compatible with both. What we call responsive design, and you can have the same capabilities on a smartphone. We're seeing a lot more self-service, automation, artificial intelligence built into how we interact in an airport environment. Here's just one example of completely computer-supported self-service transfer, right? And so no more, you see no people. This helps you get into another flight for a variety of reasons. These kiosks kind of know who you are based on the information you enter, can help you get safely and efficiently to your next destination if there's a problem. It's now about 2 years ago. 2 years ago I was in Amsterdam, Schiphol Airport, and I've traveled all over the world. I'm used to kind of handing my luggage to a person. They had eliminated that, and you basically put your luggage into a machine, and it took care of it. There was no more person receiving the baggage. I mind you, here in the United States, when I go to San Francisco Airport, which I typically do often, there are still lots and lots of humans taking my suitcase. We need to catch up here, right? There's no reason to have lines of people waiting to talk to a human who can be somewhat inefficient for a variety of reasons, when I could simply put my case into a machine, it could just take it to the plane. Third is digital signage, right? It used to be that it just told you the next flight and if it was delayed, but if you look at this particular example, there's a lot more rich information that our digital signage can share with people. Everything, to get you to a restroom, to food, to time, to weather. So the digital sort of dashboard has become a lot more sophisticated and will continue to get sophisticated. These are now just very large screens. These aren't custom built, flight number, destination, and time anymore. This screen could be an art piece if it wanted, simply by changing the input to it. And then I think this is the final one. We can't lose sight of the fact that humans want to have their experience with the things they interact with on a smartphone. Right? The experience, the technology experience, is largely going to be on a phone. Right? You get off a plane, you walk out the gate, and the first thing you want to do is, I want to go to the bathroom. Your phone needs to tell you where the bathroom is, right? And in some airports that already exist today. Or maybe you'd like a cup of coffee, or you need to do something else. But your phone is your personal digital assistant, and as airports, we need to facilitate that. That's the expectation people are going to have. Now, what's interesting is I showed you this, right, which is a major digital sign, and these things cost a heck of a lot of money, as you know. They have to be maintained, all that sort of stuff. In reality, people will be happy if it's on their smartphone. We might not need this if largely everybody has a smartphone, right? Or we may need less of this if most people have a smartphone. And of course, we're seeing this is really the fourth industrial revolution, the integration of computing power, artificial intelligence. So there's no hand touching of baggage from the moment you get to the airport to the moment you pick it up. 5 destinations later, it is all handled by robots, effectively. This is kind of cool. This was a rendering of an upcoming air traffic control tower. The guy could be anywhere, right? The entire screen, 360 view is just cameras. So air traffic control doesn't have to be at the airport, and it's all digital screens. Pretty spectacular way of thinking about air traffic control right there. So I'm going to wrap now, finally, and here are some of the key learnings. Hopefully something I said today resonated with you. Hopefully something I said maybe is a call to action, because the status quo is changing, and more quickly than most of us appreciate. We are seeing the movement of technology from the periphery to the center of life, from the outside and to the center. There's not a project discussion that we have in the city of Palo Alto where technology does not come up, right? It is almost in every conversation. How do we do that? How do we do better? We're already talking about technology. We're saying, How can we access that service through a smartphone, through a tablet? Technologies move from the outside to the center. It's moving so fast that policy can't keep up, right? I see that almost on a daily basis. Most communities are still struggling to deal with Airbnb because they don't have rules about how each of us can become essentially, hotel owners. And so local councils are quickly spinning up new legislation so that there's local laws for people who do Airbnb. And we will see a lot more industries and capabilities. So I'm going to leave with this question. I've kind of given you the backstory. I've told you what's happening. I've told you what's going to happen. So really I'm left with asking you the question, are you ready to embrace our digital future? With that, thank you very much. So I'm going to take a question or two, I think.
Actually, kind of a two-parter for you. I've been really looking a lot at self-driving vehicles and the technology and the disruption that's going to go on. I'd like to hear your viewpoint on whether you think that disruptive technology, it's definitely impacting the rental car industry and the taxi cabs. How do you feel it's going to disrupt mass transit?
Yes.
That's question one. And the second question related to an Elon Musk announcement just a couple days ago that because of AI and the increasing reliance on robotics, that eventually we're going to have to subsidize people's existence by just paying them because they won't have a job.
Great, great. So you're pretty up on this. You can see how this is sort of like now the new sort of discourse, the new dialogue. Interesting experiments being done in a few countries around, paying people a minimal amount of cash to kind of live. So, if they choose not to work, they get paid anyway. I think these are interesting economic experiments. I'm as interested as you to see how this transpires. There is some very kind of deep questions we have to ask about society and where we're headed. If indeed most work can be done by robots and AI, I'm asked a lot by people, what should I study? What should I do? Because, two things. Most of the work we do today, we won't have to do in the future. And most of the work in the future, we don't know what it is yet. so what do I go to school to do? If you go to university today, you're going to learn a topic that's in 20 years is not relevant, right? Or you'll have to relearn it. It's a real significant challenge in that regard. So I think Elon Musk is suggesting a good idea. We have to study it and understand it. So I'm just curious. I don't have a beautiful answer to that one. On the self-driving vehicles, so the place where we will see the first adopters, and we're seeing it already, is in mass transit. So there are already a number of cities in the world where the bus service it drives itself. There's a lot of trains which don't have drivers. And so we're seeing that. It exists today. It's just a matter of when will it be broadly adopted, and I think it's just over the next few years. Dubai has announced that their entire public transport system will be self-driving early in the 2020s. In terms of, I'll just say enough, I'll just remind you of a statistic I said earlier in my presentation, which to me is the most damning of all, which is truck drivers, 7 million of them, will be out of jobs because trucks will be one of the first to be self-driving before we massively adopted as fleets of shared vehicles for individuals. For trucks, it's a no-brainer because trucks largely travel on highways, right? And highways are pretty easy for self-driving. So you have this idea of hubs. So small trucks pick up things from houses, maybe with humans in them, bring them to a central center, and then the big trucks, which are self-driving, take the product to its next destination by self-driving. I think the gentleman on this table was first here. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I wasn't keeping I'll let Andy is keeping track.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me on this. A couple of things. First of all, with respect to the self-driving vehicles and the disruption, one comment you might want to consider in future presentations is the economic impact on non-aeronautical revenue generation at commercial service airports. where so many deep dives are taken into the funding vehicles that the airport generates revenue from parking.
Yeah.
And number two, speaking from my parent company's perspective, Amadeus Airport IT, some of the things that you mentioned relative to the digital airport, they are already taking place in significantly rapid-fire order. Your experience at SFO is not a technology deficiency. It is a DHS TSA issue, in as much as there is still a requirement from the Department of Homeland Security that there is physical verification of baggage ingested into the system. So with that being the case, the same airlines operating at the airports that you mentioned also operate at SFO and other airports. The preclusion of what you were referring to is not a technology shortfall. It is a regulatory issue in the United States, and thank you.
Wonderful clarification. Thank you for that. Very, very valuable. Thank you. Andy's going to be, I think this gentleman here too after that.
Just real quick, could you address the future of digital security? That's such much in the forefront now. You know.
Yes. Yes. I couldn't do justice in a quick answer to you. I'm happy to maybe even chat offline. I could do exactly the same presentation for the same length just on cybersecurity, and we would get deep into the weeds on what is not being addressed sufficiently. I left it out totally today because I didn't want it to interfere with the general messaging. But if I could summarize, we are not innovating fast enough. We are deploying technology too quickly without security considerations. The motive for a lot of organizations is to deploy capability, right? They're excited to get this new tech out. And that sometimes comes at the cost of insufficient diligence on the cybersecurity side. So I think we are in a period of high risk. We have lots of evidence at the national and international level. We have lots of evidence at the local level. Let me tell you a quick story. So the Joint Chief of Staff has been grilled by Congress on cybersecurity, and it's approximately 2012, and they ask him how many companies get hacked every year out of all the businesses in America, all the airports, all the libraries, all the businesses. And the Joint Chief of Staff says, well, it's easy answer. He said, we think about 50% of businesses are hacked, 50%, and the other 50% are not hacked, 50-50. So 50% are hacked, 50% are not hacked. So they said, thank you very much for that. It was sort of generalization. The next year he came back to give the same testimony. And he says, and that question, how many businesses in America are being attacked this year? And he says, you know what? I was wrong last year. I gave bad information. I was wrong. I want to revise what I said. He said 50% of businesses are hacked in America. The other 50% don't know they've been hacked. Right? The likelihood of every one of your organizations having been hacked is close to 100%. You just don't know about it. Right? It's close to 100. That should be sobering to you. Sometimes the evil perpetrator goes into your network, looks around, makes note, and then goes away. So you don't even know. Comes back, looks around. Yeah. Sometimes it's done by states. I'm not going to be on record saying who those states are. Some of you can guess. Some are bad actors, some are terrorists, some are just kids, people messing around. So it's a pretty dark space. I really do hope that we double, triple, quadruple our efforts in this area, both investment-wise, innovation-wise. We need to take it more seriously. It's a really important topic. Where's Andy?
So you mentioned the cost of security, and what I'm more concerned about really is what is the cost of this technology? I mean, certainly we've talked a little bit about the traditional businesses and the future that we don't know what our employment's going to be like. But what are the cost to humanity? I mean, this is exciting times, but it's I think really a lot of thought that needs to go into what does this do to human beings? Because as you mentioned, when you talk about the people that are killed in car accidents, it's all about the human factors. And so I think it's just something needs to be looked at with regard to that.
I love that question because it is not sufficiently addressed. All of this is about humans, and I focused on tech for sure, but we have some concerning things ahead of us. You look at cyberbullying, for example. It's really taking a toll on American students, kids committing suicide, or their self-esteem been impacted by what goes on online. There's a whole world of teenagers and Instagram that most parents don't know about that is terrifying, about how many people have liked your picture, or the comments that teenagers will say to each other that are so damning and so hurtful. And then you have the announcement of Facebook Live, where you can film anything. And some kids decide to film a disabled child being beaten up. Recently, another person used Facebook to televise a suicide or to broadcast it. We're getting into areas here that we have no precedent on. This is like a whole new world. We have no societal response yet. We have no laws yet. So I am really into this topic. It's actually its own discipline called technoethics. That's a real word. It's something I teach at UCF in Berkeley. The notion of the ethics of what we're doing. Because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it, right? And we are so driven by money and success. Often we will do something without contemplating the ultimate consequences of those decisions. When we looked at that curve, 2020 and beyond, and I said it kind of gave me goosebumps, because it's both exciting but terrifying. The terrifying is what we don't know. It's the human cost of this change. Thank you for the question. Okay.
When do you anticipate a conversion to fully automated aircraft, commuter aircraft, etc., as well as maybe the FAA saying it's time to change the fleet mix into battery-powered aircraft that have lower noise signatures, maybe with solar collectors on the wings?
Yeah. So that's the right question. It's a good question. So you're talking about entirely self-driving airplanes, electric possible planes. I tend to get deep into the topics I'm really good at, but I avoid the ones I don't know so much about. So I'm going to sort of kind of punt that question in that I actually don't know enough about the topic to give it meaning. There's a lot on this topic, and it's a lot of good people talking about it and sort of speculating. I'm more confident in talking about, the transition to cars will take place during the 2020s. Less confident to share any prediction on aircraft. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
On behalf of the Southwest Chapter of AAA, donation has been made in your honor to the Wounded Warrior Project.
Thank you
very much. And then we have some toffee here for you.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very kind.
All right. Okay. We'll take a break. But before that, I want to thank AAP Inc. And please, the breaks with the exhibitors. We're back here at 11. So thank you.